We're here to bring you up to date on the war in the Pacific. It all started with the bombing of Pearl Harbor, and that started the war. And it was declared the next day with 2,400 Americans died and 1,200 wounded at Pearl Harbor. This day will live in infamy. Roosevelt declared that this day will live in infamy. And then the Japanese invaded Hong Kong, Singapore, Guam, awakened the Philippines. And by 1942, Japan had captured Hong Kong. The Japanese forced American Filipino prisoners to the Baton Peninsula. It was called the Baton Death March. It was a 63-mile march, and it occurred 2 months after the loss of the Philippines. And Japanese soldiers beat and bayoneted to a point where more than 7,000 died.
Go.
Following the loss of the Philippines and the Bataan Death March, General James Doolittle led 16 bombers on April 18, 1942. The bombs did little damage, but it shocked the Japanese country, and it made the Japanese decide to try and destroy the remaining American fleet. And after Doolittle's raid on Tokyo, following that was the Battle of Coral Sea, where Admiral Chester Nimitz led a war that was fought entirely by carrier-based aircraft. And it was the first naval battle in history where enemies never came in sight of each other. And the Americans managed to block off Japanese expansion to the south and learn that the Japanese could be beaten. The last Japanese offensive and the major turning point of the war was the Battle of Midway that stopped the Japanese expansion in June 1942. How it happened, the Americans had intercepted a Japanese message saying of their plans to target the U.S. air-based fleet in Midway. And following that, the U.S. planned and set up, they waited in wait basically, and they had destroyed the enemy force when they arrived, and Japan never recovered from the loss of carriers and experienced pilots. And now here's Sarah Jane with more on the story.
During the war in the Pacific, the Americans used a strategy called island hopping. This allowed the Americans to go offensive with limited resources. First, they would attack a heavily defended island, and then they would capture a nearby island that wasn't as well defended. Many of the invasions came at a terrible cost to the Americans. Both Iwo Jima and Okinawa were key islands to capture. They would both serve as bases for escorting bombers over to Japan, and they were a good staging area for the invasion of Japan. Iwo Jima was the bloodiest of the wars, and it took a month with almost 7,000 American troops that died and 22,000 Japanese. Okinawa lasted for 2 months, and 12,000 Americans died and 100,000 Japanese soldiers died.
Manhattan projects were a test for a top-secret program that developed an atomic weapon. 3 years later, Einstein sent his letter about how scientists would be soon able to make extremely powerful bombs, and tested this bomb in New Mexico. During those wars, a new weapon was introduced by Japanese pilots, where a man threw their bomb-filled planes directly into the ships of the Allied fleet. They sank and damaged the largest ship and failed to sink aircraft carriers, which were their main target. Now here's Avery with more on atomic bombs.
In Hiroshima and Nagasaki, 2 atomic bombs were dropped, forcing Japan to surrender. 3 days after Hiroshima, a second bomb dropped on Nagasaki, killing 40,000 people instantly.
After the atomic bombs were dropped, Truman received a letter, August 14th, stating Japan's surrender. Marking the end of the Second World War, they call it VJ Day.
Thank you for watching our show.